Hi, friends. Welcome back to Reading Strategies Day 4. So if you are tuning in for the very first time and you're like, oh, Reading Strategies Day 4, I don't know what 1, 2, and 3 was, then you probably want to back up, go back to your front page of YouTube to that home screen and find the literacy playlist and look at 4-6, which is April 6th, April 7th, and April 8th. Because if you haven't done those days, then this day will be very difficult. Okay. As previously discussed, we've been looking at author's purpose. If you'll look at your note-taking page for today, be sure you have a piece of paper handy and a pen or a pencil or a marker. Also, whiteboards work really well too for jotting down any ideas and thoughts before you start IXL. We're going to be looking at activity D1, compare and contrast. Now, as we previously discussed, there are 3 main types of writing. At this point, you should have this memorized. There's persuasive writing, entertaining writing, and informative writing. It's easy as pie, P-I-E. Obviously, yesterday we looked at some different text structures, all based in informative text. We're going to do the same thing today. Today, we're going to zoom in on comparing and contrasting. Comparing and contrasting. Most of you all know exactly what this is. You could probably do it in your sleep. For those of you who don't, comparing and contrasting is a type of informative writing where our author is giving us a topic, in most cases 2 or more topics, and explaining the similarities and differences between those 2 topics. So if you look here in our pie chart, persuasive writing is one type of writing, informative writing is another type, and entertaining writing is the third. We're zooming in on this informative section here, talking only about informative text right now. As we discussed yesterday, the 4 main or 5 main types of informative writing are compare and contrast, sequential, description, problem solution, and cause and effect. All 5 of these types of writing are informative writing. They're telling us about a topic. Comparing and contrasting are writing, like we just said, that is 2 different topics, writing about what's similar and different about them. As you're looking for elements of compare and contrast writing, signal words are really important. So if you think about the last time you were driving in the car with your mom or your dad and you get to a stoplight and you notice your mom stops. She stops. She stops because she sees that the light has turned red. We call that a signal. The signal has turned red. She knows the signal means she's supposed to stop. So she does. When you see signals in literature, it looks a little different. Signals come by means of signs, by words, graphics, any type of really strong language. And in this case, signals are certain words that indicate that our author is giving us similarities or differences. There's different types of words too. So if you notice here on your note-taking page, the very first thing we're doing once we identify that our text is compare and contrast is we have to ask ourselves, what is the topic or topics of the text? We have to know what we're even discussing to be able to know if there's similarities and differences and what they are. Once you've identified the topics, then you're looking for signal words that show similarities, signal words that show differences. Okay. I've listed a few examples for you of them here. I'm sorry, Miss Jansen's getting tired. The first thing you're looking for are signal words that indicate differences. So your author presents 2 different topics, and then she starts to present differences with those topics. So one thing you'll see is she may say, pizza is round. In contrast, many sandwiches with sandwich bread are square. Okay, some sandwiches are round, but many are square. So she's saying in contrast to show they're different. She may also use instead of, or on the other hand, or however. These are not the only signal words, but they're easily the most popular. When you see any of these words, the author is about to explain a difference to you between the 2 topics. The next signal words we look for are signal words that indicate similarities. For example, similarly, the same way, just the same, or much like. These are all words that indicate that the author is about to name something that is similar than the topic they just discussed. So I might say, this board is white and black and square. Similarly, this marker is also white and black. However, it is round, not square. By using the word however, I showed you I was about to name a difference. By using the word similarly, I was showing that I was naming things they had that were in common. Once you've identified your signal words in the text, you can use those signal words to determine what they have in common versus what they have different from each other. Take a moment now and pull up IXL, go to D1, compare and contrast, and let's look at one together. Hi there. So what we've found is we're on D1. I'm going to read my text. I already know that it's an informative text because it tells me it's a compare and contrast. So I don't need to stop and think like, oh, what is my author's purpose? If it's a compare and contrast text, I know the author's purpose is to inform me. My first step is to figure out what the topics are of my sentence. And the main thing that I'm looking for is what's the author mainly talking about? What is she about to describe as similar and differences? You ready? Masks play an important role in many cultures. So right off the bat, our topic sentence talks about masks and how they play a role in cultures. I venture to say that our author is about to describe the differences and similarities between many masks in cultures. Let's look and see. In some parts of West Africa, for example, wooden masks are worn during religious and social ceremonies. Many of these masks are painted and decorated with natural materials such as straw, feathers, or shells. In contrast, so I'm seeing that by our author using this word in contrast, that shows me that she's about to name a difference between these masks and the masks she was talking about originally. In contrast, the Hikol people of Mexico decorate their wooden masks with colorful beads and yarn. These bright, festive masks are not worn during Hikol ceremonies. Instead, they are designed to document the ceremonial face paint that is worn. Hikol masks are also made to record myths and traditions. Though different in appearance and use, the masks made in West Africa and Mexico do have one thing in common. They both reflect the culture and beliefs of the people who make them. So in this beginning part of our paragraph, I see that our author has named a bunch of differences, and we know that because they offset those sentences with this transition word in contrast. That shows they're connecting one difference to another difference. But then down here, I see the word like instead, which also shows me that she's naming another difference. Up here it says, they are bright and festive masks, but they're not worn during Hikol ceremonies, whereas our other masks were worn during ceremonies. And she says, instead, they are designed to document the ceremonial face paint. So she's named another difference. Let's see if we find any similarity words. Ooh, I see down here in this last sentence, it says, the masks made in West Africa and Mexico do have one thing in common. They both reflect the culture and beliefs of the people who make them. So seeing that one transition word and phrase, one thing in common, that shows me that they only have one similarity. The rest are differences. But that similarity is that they both reflect the culture and beliefs of the people who make them. Here in our chart, I see that they're wanting us to select which of the two types of masks fall under these categories. So, which of these two masks are worn during ceremonies? My options are West African masks or Hikol masks. I look back into my paragraph and I remember them talking about ceremonies. It says, many of these, meaning many of the masks in West Africa, are painted and decorated with natural materials. They are worn during religious and social ceremonies. In contrast, the Hikol people of Mexico decorate their wooden masks, but they are not worn during ceremonies. So it's the West African masks that are worn during ceremonies, not the Hikol masks. My second fact, I need to figure out which topic it goes with. Are decorated with colorful beads and yarn. Well, that was right here after it says in contrast. It says the Hikol people of Mexico decorate their wooden masks with colorful beads and yarn. But I also know that's only the Hikol people because it says in contrast, which means it's different than the masks that came before in the description. So the Hikol masks actually are decorated with beads and yarn. The West African masks are not. Lastly, reflect the culture of those who make them. As I recall from my word that shows similarities, they have one thing in common. They both reflect the culture. So I would check both boxes for that particular element of our text. Submit my answer, and I got it right. Good luck, friends.